So apparently, Concord did not cost. We all thought that it costed $100 million. Well,
I want to talk about Concord. I wasn't going to ever talk about this game again because who really gives a shit? However, and I don't do journalism really anymore, as you guys know, and we talk about this a lot. I was a journalist.
A lot of people don't. Yeah, don't. You're in good. You're in good company then.
At one time, and I used to break a lot of stories, and these days I don't really grind like that. So the stories that I break these days are usually people, always, not usually, always people coming to me.
Sure.
And someone who worked on Concord reached out to me, and I verified who this person was and went through all of that and talked to this person extensively, for a long time. Ooh. And got some, I think, interesting information that I can share about Concord. I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong as far as how much it cost and how much Sony really lost on it. So the big thing that you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
How? Oh. 8 years of AAA game development? You know what? You're not entirely wrong. Yeah. 8 years, big studio. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
$400 million.
The story goes that
insane.
Concord, by the time Concord was, so in the first quarter of 2023, Concord had basically entered an alpha state.
Right.
This was before Sony had even purchased the team. But Sony had been working with Probably Monsters, and which was the original owner.
They were able to play the game and they still bought it? Well, no wonder that gem guy got kicked out. What the hell was he thinking? What the fuck?
Firewalk, probably since late 2020, maybe 2021 at the latest on Concord. The game was in development before that. Up to the point that the game went into alpha state, they had already spent about $200 million on it. And it's unclear how much of that money is from Probably Monsters and the original investors into the game and how much of that money was from Sony. There's this term in product development, not only with games, but really with everything. You can like manufacture a shot.
Sure.
You guys might have heard of it. It's called minimum viability or
minimum viable product. Yeah. MVP.
Minimum viable product.
Yeah.
The idea behind this, or MVP, the idea behind this is that this is like what you're trying to achieve, and it's like once you cross this barrier, you feel comfortable selling it. It's not.
Yeah, that's this is also known as the pre-order bonus. This is what you get whenever you pre-order a game. Yeah, there you go. And that's the way all games are released.
Not that it's the best it can be, or that it's what it's going to be by the time you launch it, because there's all sorts of extra stuff you do to it. But like, this is the minimum viability of the product. When the game had already had $200 million spent on it and was basically in an alpha form in quarter one of 2023, from that point until the game launched, Sony spent another $200 million on it.
How do you do that? Like, I'm really curious, right? Like, how do you make money disappear like that? That's crazy. Yeah, these people should, after they made Concord, they should become like magicians or something. They should work for the Federal Reserve. They can get rid of all the inflation. They'll just delete all the money.
Scuttlebutt behind the scenes about Concord is that the game was in a laughable shape when it was shown, and basically like when the alpha was ready to go, and they were kind of being like, we're ready to kind of get moving towards getting this thing out in the next year or two.
Sure.
It was in such horrible shape that Sony felt like they needed to spend that much money again. So, 200 plus 200 to get the game to the MVP status, not.
Jesus Christ. How do you spend $200 million and it's barely even good enough to release? Oh my God. It's sunk cost fallacy. I think that's what happened. I do. I feel like they bought it and they were so invested into it that they were like, well, we have to do it now. We're this close.
To the status of it being like a great game, to get it to just viability.
Oh my God.
And that at that time in Q1 2023, there was nothing done. Like a major expense was having to urgently outsource much of the game to other studios to finish building the game out.
So they didn't even do it themselves. So they spent $200 million and the studio couldn't even then figure out a way to do it in-house? Oh my God. Like, this is how do you do, like, what the hell happened? That's incredible.
And that two fundamental things were not worked on at all up to the point in which the game was shown in alpha. Onboarding, nothing about that. No, like there was nothing about how players get on, like how they make their character, all that kind of stuff, or, you know, choose their character and get there. And monetization. Two very expensive, very specific and boutique things that happen to games like this.
Sure.
And so that's the first thing that I wanted to say, is that it's not only about the ongoing cost, which would be in the millions to keep the game going per month.
Exactly.
But that the game...
That's why Sony cut the cord. I think that's what it was. Is like they had already spent $400 million, or they had spent $200 million. They bought the company for like a certain amount of money too. So like they had already spent hundreds of millions of dollars, and the game to have that much of a fuck up, I'm pretty sure somebody at Sony was like, all right, guys, enough is enough. Let's take her out to the back of the barn and, well, you know how it is.
Cost about $400 million to make, soup to nuts. Sony put most of that money in, and it is not only so, because we had kind of said like this must be Sony's biggest loss ever on a game, and it is. It's the biggest
so far. I think they can do better. I think they'll do it. I think they could do something even worse than this.
Game Sony's ever released from a budgetary standpoint, from the first party or second
most
party.
Expensive.
So let that sink in.
It's crazy.
And it's totally unintuitive. There are games that are in development right now at Sony first and second party that are more expensive than this. But as of the games that have come out so far, so think about like Spider-Man 2 and so on and so forth. We know The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million. Spider-Man 3 is going to cost about $350 million. This game costs more.
I wonder if the people that are making games ever think to themselves, maybe we're spending too much money on making these games. Because like if it costs $350 million, right? Like let's talk the economics of this. If it goes from 260 to 320, they're probably expecting to either sell more copies or charge more money, right? Because everything they have like a goal projection, and you can assume that internally the goal is not to make less money than the last product, right? That you can easily assume that they are trying to make more money than they made on the last one. So how are they going to make that money? Are they going to have weird pre-order things? Are they going to have a early access? Is the game going to be $90 instead of $70? There's going to be something, because somewhere down the line, somehow they're going to have to make that extra $80 million back.
Than that. And they lost all of it.
Yeah.
Because they made no money. They made about $1 million gross revenue.
$1 million. Spend $400 million and you make $1 million. Gross revenue, not net. Oh my God. That's incredible.
and then they gave it all back. So this is a huge, multiple hundreds of millions of dollar loss. Now
they could have invested into Bored Apes and they would have made more money. Like, you could have invested into Enron almost and probably made more money. Like, I'm trying to think of like just massive failures that would still make more money than this. You mean lost less money? Yeah, I guess so.
Question is, why? Why did this happen?
That's a good question.
This game was heavily championed behind the scenes. Now we know this because Sony ended up, what's funny is that the game is presented in Q1 2023 as this.
Dude, this is really going to be like what I was saying about how the PS5 Pro was probably leaning super hard on Concord. They were probably betting on this being a huge W, and I bet they had to like fucking rush cut like a third out of the PS5 Pro trailer.
You know, we're kind of getting towards the end. The game is nowhere near being done. It's in a horrible position. And then Sony buys the team.
Yeah.
The idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used, that Concord is the future of PlayStation. That they had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony.
I think that there's a lot of people that need to get fired. Like, you can't. I mean, that's a no, that's not true. It's a $399 million mistake. You can't just mess something up like that. That's crazy.
That it can be repeatedly revisited over and over and over again.
Oh, wait, you're right. It is 400 because they gave everybody all their money back. I forgot. Yeah, no. Okay, no, I forgot all about that. Yes, no, you're right. $400 million mistake. Oh my God.
Not only in cross media, but in what we were seeing, we've already kind of seen little bits of it. So the weekly story vignettes that they were going to release, and then of course the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology, that's like just scratching the surface of it. Ironically, the game was codenamed Chaos behind the scenes, and a major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe.
Yeah, because if you can't go against it, you can't say anything, and this is the problem, right? Is that there's certain ideals and certain types of like things in video games that you can't question. Like, think about how much shit I got whenever I said that I thought the body type 1 and 2 thing with video games was stupid. Tons of people were like getting mad at me and trying to call me out and shit on me for that. So nobody probably inside of the industry is going to do that because they don't want to risk their job. You see what I'm saying? Because these are the kinds of people that will make up lies about you and then go to HR and get you fired. So that's what I think happened. It's the same thing with having pronouns for the characters. So it's like you can't question this or say that it's a problem, because if you do, then you're enabling bigotry or somehow you're a bad person. So it's like, how do you address the fact that this isn't going to resonate with an audience? Well, you can't. You can't address it. You can't talk about it. So you just have to let it go and let it happen. You think they just hired yes men? No. I think that there is a chilling effect from the way that people handle like any sort of friction with narratives like this. So basically, and you see this all the time, right? Like, think about the kind of things that people say about me. They say that I hate trans people. They say I hate women. Like I all of these things, right? I hate gay people. I'm racist, etc. And so if you're saying all these things about a person and this is a work environment, this is extremely damaging to a person's career. It can be extremely, like, massively damaging. And I think this is especially true inside of the context of this specifically, because these are the kinds of people that will go to your new employer and then try to push this agenda with them to get you fired from your new job. These are the people that will call your job to get you fired because you made a Facebook tweet, Facebook post that was something that they disagreed with politically, right? These are the kinds of people that do it. You might even get blamed for their mistakes. Yeah, exactly. Like, they're super vitriolic. They're super sanctimonious. They're going to do everything that they can to, like, assert themselves as being the, the good group of people, etc. And I think there's a lot of people that work in the gaming industry that probably don't like this at all, but they can't speak out about it, because if they speak out about it, they lose their job. Because they get mischaracterized by this group of people that have been involved with gaming long enough to control enough of the process. I think this is what's happening. And I think if you think about it, right? If I speak, I'm in trouble. Exactly, right? And so a lot of people don't speak out against it. They probably don't want to die on that hill, and it doesn't matter, and it's not that big of a deal to them. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, they might think this is stupid or it's not going to go well, but they care more about keeping their job than, like, trying to argue about body type 1 and 2 or putting pronouns for a robot. Like, they care about this, but they don't really care about this more than their job or their well-being, right? Yeah, they're still going to get paid, which is reasonable. Of course, people are going to think that. But that's the way that it happens, is because reasonable people are afraid to speak out because they don't want to be made an example of by people that are extremists. And I think that's what's happened.
Weren't allowed to say anything, apparently, internally about this game.
Exactly, yeah.
About how, like, something's wrong with it, character designs are not right.
Exactly, because if you say the character designs aren't right, then you are potentially saying that people of size should not be in video games. And this is the issue, right? Or, oh, you're saying minorities shouldn't be in this game. Oh, you just want everybody to be white people. What are you, a white supremacist? Why would anybody want to do that? Why would anybody put themselves in the crosshairs of that? Because, like, for me, like, I'm in a very, very unique position. I have a huge community. A lot of people watch my content. Tons of people agree with me. And as long as I don't break the YouTube or the Twitch terms of service, I still get to make money. So, like, effectively, if somebody on Twitter gets upset about something, they can't, like, complain to my boss and just, like, get me fired based off of some bullshit, right? And so, as a content creator, and especially, like, given the success of my content, like, I mean, you know, it's not like this isn't a glaze thing, right? But, like, it's just the truth. A lot of people watch the content. I can afford to have these opinions because I don't need to rely on any sort of preferential treatment that these people trade for engaging in their narratives. I don't need to play ball with this. And so that's why I think a lot of people also don't like me, too. Especially people inside of the industry, because I don't have, and I think also, by the way, I don't want to get into specifics for obvious reasons, but I have had multiple people in the video games industry message me privately and say, yeah, we agree with you. We absolutely fucking agree with you. It's just that they can't speak out against it because they're afraid. Really? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. What do you think? They're all retarded? No, they're not stupid. Yeah, no, they see what's happening. I think it's ridiculous. They think it's just as ridiculous as we do. Maybe they should start doing so. I think you're going to see a very big, like, return to form to gaming that's going to happen in the next 10 years. Because I think that, again, a lot of these products are just simply not selling. And there's no way that you can make people buy a product. Like, basically, you can shame employees into not speaking out against you, but you can't shame a market into buying a product. So what keeps happening is that products come out that don't meet market expectations, and then the market doesn't buy them. People say, how did we know this didn't happen? And eventually people are going to figure it out. And I think that they already are. I do. Diversity is not innovation. Do you think Concord Studio also had some of these people afraid to speak out? Absolutely, they did. And I actually think that the more likely answer is that Concord Studio initially had those people. The Sony people that worked with Concord initially had these expectations, but then they either left the team, they got pushed out, or they just lost interest and just did their job anyway. A job's a job. Do you think gaming went this direction when the Oculus came out? I think that one of the really big turning points probably, I think cultural turning points, like what would have really happened, are actually things that didn't really have a lot to do with gaming. So, for example, you had Elon Musk buying Twitter. I think that really played a really big role because before then, pretty much all social media was controlled by the exact same group of people that had all of the same values. And so if you spoke out against something, you would be completely unpersoned from the internet. Twitter gets bought by Elon Musk. They get rid of those rules. And now there's a leak in the dam. And before you know it, the floodgates are open and everybody's typing the N-word again. That's what happened, right? You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. Everybody's racist again. And so why is that? Were people not racist whenever Twitter wasn't like that? No, it's just that they were getting banned and making new accounts and the posts were getting deleted. And so I think that really went to show, because if you can see, this is a huge thing, right? If people on the old Twitter were unable to express certain opinions, the reason why those people aren't able to express those opinions is because a lot of people, they would get banned. So you would never see really, really viral, super popular posts that had a extremely conservative lean to them. You would never see that because those accounts would get banned. Or they would get suppressed or silenced or suspended or something would happen to them. But now that people can see that actually there's a lot of other people that think the same way that I do, now you're seeing it change. And I'll also give you another good example, right? Is that look at Dr. Disrespect. Nobody is going to come out and say that it's a good thing that, or they don't care that Dr. Disrespect was talking inappropriately with a minor, allegedly. Nobody is going to say that, right? However, it's very obvious that the audience that is actually consuming content doesn't care about that. That's because content creators and people on the internet care more about optics. So when you have a content creator, and this is a very healthy thing for you to look at, and you can also see, for example, think about the Hogwarts Legacy, all of that drama as well. People don't care. Yeah, exactly. Because average people don't make decisions based off of this. So I think that Twitter being able to be an actual free place for people to have opinions and say what they think was a massive turning point for why I think that you're seeing such a big backlash against this. It's because beforehand you were not able to have this opinion. You couldn't speak. Now that people can speak, they're making up for lost time. And I think also there's other instances like the Bud Light controversy and a handful of other things, like Trump winning, I think was probably a precursor to this as well. So yeah, speedrunning racism. Yeah, pressure cooker of silence. Yeah, exactly. And if you make people stay silent for too long, they will revolt against you. Certain words still get censored on Twitter. Yeah, the bundle of sticks word. You do get you'll get you can type the word and you don't get banned. It's just that it gets hidden, right? And so that's really what happens. Elon buying Twitter and saving free speech, really the biggest W of our lifetime. I think it was very important that Elon bought Twitter, and I think that Twitter is a lot better because of that. So that's what I think. What do you think a paradigm of modern audience being a gold mine is finally finished? Well, the problem is that the modern audiences... The issue also is that a lot of people would consume content that was created for modern audiences because dissenting opinions about that content were not as easily accessible. But now, because dissenting opinions are more easily accessible and more people are able to see, wait a minute, there's a huge confirmation bias that people get from watching something and then being told that it's entertaining. People really like being told what to think. So if they're reading a bunch of posts and all of the posts are saying that, like, you know, the Star Wars Acolyte show is good, they're going to talk about it being good. So I think that a lot of people really downplay how sheepish the average person is. So the moment that the average person can see that they don't have one perspective, they have two perspectives or multiple perspectives they can look at, then they can think for themselves. But when they're only shown one perspective, then they're all going to think that one thing. Look at vaccines during COVID. I think that COVID and the vaccine thing was actually probably one of the biggest agitators for this. It was like, I would say probably the worst one. Because what happened was that, like, everybody who was able to talk, and I know I'm going off like super, super long on this, but I hope you guys can see kind of like how all this fits together, right? Is that during COVID, it was very evident that the CDC, well, I mean, to be honest with you, they were doing what you do in any experiment. You try something, you see if it works. It doesn't work, you try something different. But the problem is that the fact that you weren't able to criticize the vaccine, the fact that you weren't able to criticize or draw any doubts about the way that you had to do things, like you know, this you know, distancing and like wearing a mask, etc., like COVID restrictions. Sorry, I was thinking about something else. The fact that you weren't able to do any of these things and speak out against it caused people to have a tremendous pushback. It created a massive pushback for this. And you saw people losing their job over, you know, not wanting to take the vaccine. That's crazy. That's crazy. And it doesn't matter to you. Like, I mean, and there's a lot of you guys probably took the vaccine and you think it was a good decision. It's fine. I'm not going to argue about whether that was or wasn't a good decision, because I'm not a chemist. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a virologist. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that for people to see that happen, and then to see the fact that you were not able to criticize this thing, and then to see the fact that this thing minted new billionaires from the owners of the company, and then the fact that these companies are privately held, that were being seen as the gold standard of the government, created a massive level of distrust that I don't think that we will recover from in 20 years. It was an insane level of distrust. At 40? Yeah, like it is a generational fuck up. So anyway, that's why I think you see this happen. And that's why I think things are going to change. It's because opinions like the opinions that people that are Concord enjoyers have, these opinions cannot exist in a free market, and they cannot exist inside of a like an evolutionary scope. They can only exist when they're protected and dissenting opinions can't prey on them. That's what happens. So in the free marketplace of ideas, these ideas die. And that's why they tried so hard to make it to where you didn't have a free marketplace of ideas. There are things that you just can't question, things that you can't be against. Even though, again, a lot of people, you can change what people say. It's a lot harder to change what people think. Especially when they have the option to talk about what they think. They can't win under scrutiny? Yeah. So that's basically it. I hate it. I go to work COVID, veterinary lab. We got COVID swabs. And we hadn't any safety protocols for human samples. Well, I don't want to talk about like COVID or anything like that. I'm just saying that, like, I think that these were like kind of the dominoes that fell that have caused such a massive counter reaction to things like Concord, or things like Dragon Age, or things like Dustborn, or things like the Acolyte, etc. This has been how the dominoes have fell. And I think there's a handful of other things that happen too. But yeah. Anyway, back to the video. This tangent was probably longer than the fucking video. But yeah, that's why and how it happened, I think.
And so on and so forth. They really truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently. And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game. So it's not that. So the reason I'm telling you all of this, it's some interesting information, of course, but it's that I had said, when people were like, Concord lost $200 million. Now, people were pulling that money out because that's basically how much like some of the first party games like Ghost of Tsushima The Last of Us Part 2, etc., kind of cost in that frame
of reference. Yep.
And I was like, there's no way that it costs that much. I was saying like it cost 9 figures probably, like low $100 million, but there's no way it cost $200 million. No, it cost $400 million.
Oh my God.
And I am totally solid on this source, by the way. So that's why I'm willing to share it with you. Because again, I'm not really a journalist. So
wow.
Yeah, the big things to take away: $400 million loss. The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months ago before release.
It was in horrible shape 18 days ago. But yeah, there's that too.
Monetization, no onboarding, most content not even there. The game was in such bad shape at that point that they spent the budget of it again in urgent outsourcing to get the game finished from all of these different angles over an 18-month period. Internally, the game was considered part of the future of PlayStation with heavy cross-media references and a system of toxic positivity.
Think about how big it is, the fact that the Netflix show was made for Concord before Concord even released. I think that's probably the best data point that I can use to verify what he's saying. That's crazy. Was it Amazon? It was an Amazon show. Oh, Amazon, not Netflix. Sorry. But there was an Amazon show. There's like a series of shows that were based off of video game worlds. Like I think they're doing a Cyberpunk one, a God of War one, you know, like Last of Us, I think. No, actually probably not, because they did a whole show about that. And they did a Concord one as well called Secret Level. Yeah, it's like a mini show. Or mini series, excuse me. And they made one for Concord. And so you would have to easily assume that the filming for a lot of this is probably already done. The shooting for a lot of this is probably already done. So they did all of this. They basically wrote a blank check for Concord. They said this game is going to be successful, and we're even going to make like Amazon like produced like film media about this game. Crazy level of investment.
Activity surrounding it that didn't allow anyone to meaningfully change the course of the game, because if the people at the top truly believe in something, you're not going to be able to do much about that, I don't think, from the
and think about it from like your perspective, right? Like let's say you're one of the guys that's on the ground, you're doing the work. Well, what do you think happens if you're the one speaking out against the executive's idea that he's this is his game that he really wants to push out there? It's going to be like our Overwatch. It's going to be our Star Wars. Well, now you're the enemy and you get fired. That's what happens.
Trenches. So I thought people would be interested in that, and just wanted to throw that out there that, Star Wars really apparently, or I'm sorry, Star Wars. Sony really saw this as a Star Wars-like project for them, like the potential to, and now it makes sense.
That's sad.
Yeah. Not only why they spent so much money on it, but why they bought the team. So there are people there.
What a mistake.
And to me, it's unclear who exactly the people are. I know some of the names. I don't want to get too deep into that, because a lot of the things I learned were off the record, but obviously this is on background.
Yeah.
And it's like, now it makes a little more sense. You spent, and by the way, the $400 million not included in how much it cost to buy the team.
Oh my God. Unbelievable.
So Concord is Sony's biggest released game by budget to date, and it is the biggest loss that they've ever had as a company on a project before.
That's amazing. Almost $500 million. This might just be the biggest media flop in general, not just video games. It's hard to say because a lot of these companies don't actually say how much money they spend on things. But that is fucking incredible. Like, a dev culture of toxic positivity halted any negative feedback. That's usually how terrible ideas get that far. If you give feedback, you're the bad guy, so people just stop doing it after a while. Exactly. With the $400 million budget, you could have made 4 amazing PlayStation titles. Yeah, or you could make one Concord. Factoring Sony bought the studio or not, no, she didn't watch it. They said that at the end. Concord budget was $400 million to make. That is beyond insane. Well, look, Concord is a massive failure, but I don't believe this number for a second. The whole I know someone who knows something tweets are just never believable to me at this point. So, well, let's think about this logically, right? So I actually don't think that's true at all, because if you think about the amount of money that it takes to run a studio for, for 8 years, and a AAA studio with over 100 employees, and then you also talk about like all of the, because they said that they were spending money outsourcing. And when you outsource something, you're also spending a tremendous amount of money doing that. You're paying a premium in order to be able to do this. And a TV show, yeah, it's hard to know how the funding for the TV show happened. And you even look at other games like Elden Ring cost $200 million. Star Citizen is upwards of $700 million so far. And the game's not even finished yet. So there's tons of examples of this happening. And I think also, really, there's also the matter of bloat and mismanagement. Like, I think that Twitter is a great example of this. How is it that Elon Musk fired 80% of people at Twitter, but Twitter basically functions the exact same? Well, I'll tell you how. It's bloat and overhiring. So I think that Concord was probably a perfect storm of all of these bad things happening at the same time. Massively bloated teams, huge overhiring, toxic positivity, having to hire and pay a premium because of outsourcing, massive delays, focus on a minimum viable product rather than an actual finished product. Like, think about it, right? You put all that together, and $400 million doesn't seem that crazy. It doesn't function the same. They aren't banning anyone with a conservative opinion. Well, what I'm saying is that a lot of companies, like, for example, a lot of companies can make video games with very, very small studio sizes, and then other companies have massive studio sizes, and they still can't figure out how to make a game. I think that obviously a bigger studio has an advantage, but it's very obvious that it's not that simple.